everyone, and welcome to my September Recent Reads wrap-up. I read a lot of things in September, so let's talk about some of my favourite things I read during the month. First up, I want to mention Stormfront, which is the first one in the Dresden Files series, and I really like this one. This one is following Harry Dresden, who is essentially a private detective by way of being a magician, sorcerer type character, and I really like this one. I can definitely see why it is compared to Skullduggery, and it's called basically the adult version of Skullduggery, because in a lot of ways it very much was, but I also really enjoy this because I love the magic system in here. I thought the case was really easy to follow as well, which is saying something for me because I'm not usually someone who can read a book about some kind of murder mystery or anything and actually follow what's going on. It's actually something I really struggle with, so I was so happy to be reading this book and to actually follow the case. That was fantastic. I also like the humour in here, the magic system was great, the world this built up was also fantastic, and I generally really enjoyed myself. And really the only complaint I had was that at a few points it was a little bit male gazy, but apart from that I did really like this one, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the series. Next up, I also read Elle McNichol's Role Model, and this was absolutely fantastic once again. This is a middle grade novel all about Ariel Sharp, whose mother has just been voted the Prime Minister of England, and basically all of the attention is now on Ariel because she is autistic, and they are viewing her as a role model and making her a spokesperson for autism and all of this kind of thing, and it was fantastically done. This one, once again, like all of Elle McNichol's work, absolutely hit me in the feelings once again. I related so hard to so many things going on in this book as well, even though I'm not related to absolutely anybody like even remotely famous or anything else. I still related to a lot of the situations in here. I really loved Ariel as a main character, and I will always love a storyline where a main character is learning to embrace their neurodivergence and love it, and the people around them unlearn their ableism as well, which is absolutely what happens in this book, and I really enjoyed myself once again, and I was enjoying it so much actually that I read this in a literal morning in like 2 hours. I sped through this book. I loved it. Next up, I also read Immortal Longings, and I really love this one as well. This one is very much the Hunger Games meets Antony and Cleopatra in a lot of ways, and I really liked this. I will say that any reference to Antony and Cleopatra went completely over my head, as I have no idea about the play. I don't even know the basic premise of the play, to be honest, but I did really love those Hunger Games elements in here. I also love the magic in here in the sense that our characters can basically body swap. I love that element of this book as well, and I also love that this one was not afraid to get brutal at points as well, because with storylines like this you can only ever go brutal, and I'm glad that this book and Chloe Gong did not hold back from that brutality at all, and I really liked this one as well. I also read A Trail Through Time by Jodie Taylor, and this is the fourth one in the Chronicles of St. Mary series, which is essentially a series about a bunch of historians who can travel through time and the abject chaos they get into throughout the ages, and this one was so much fun and is definitely my favourite so far of it. I will say that that is partially because, and I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers here, but I'm not really going to count the Time Police as a spoiler because there is an entire spin-off series from this one about the Time Police, so I'm just going to say right now that talking about the Time Police is not a spoiler, but I did really love the Time Police in here and how they were introduced. It reminded me a lot of the TVA from Loki, which definitely amused me and made my nerd heart very happy to be reading this one, so I loved everything to do with that. I loved how it really introduced the Time Police and how scary they really were as well, and dealing with those more serious topics, especially as they basically trying to fight against the TVA and what the TVA stands for. I'm calling it the TVA again. I mean the Time Police. Every time I've tried to film this part of this review, I keep on calling it the TVA, so I apologise. I mean the Time Police. But I really love how this built up the Time Police and how you were made to be very scared of them in a lot of ways, but it also did not stop with the chaos and everything else you usually get in a St. Mary's book. There were so many moments in here where I was literally laughing out loud at some of the stuff that they were doing and some of the stuff they were saying and things like this, and I really enjoyed myself once again with this book, and it is definitely my favourite one so far. And then the final book I read was The Monstrous Regimen by Terry Pratchett, and this one I'm definitely going to have to reread physically at some point because I was listening to the audiobook in like 20-minute chunks, and that was just not enough time to be fully immersing myself in this book and really understanding this book and everything else. There were several moments where I started reading it again and I'd be like, wait, what do you mean that's happened? And I would have completely missed some of it or forgotten some of it or whatever. So I'm definitely going to be rereading this book physically at some point. But from what I picked up from the story, I did really like it. I really liked the feminist twist on it, and I did really enjoy myself when I understood what was going on. And then as for the comics I read, the first thing I want to mention is Doctor Strange issue 450, and this is a collection of very short stories by various authors and artists about Doctor Strange, and this one just reminded me why I love Stephen so much and why he is my favourite superhero. I know I talk a lot about Bucky and Loki, and I've mentioned Loki a lot in this video, and I mentioned Bucky a lot, but honestly, Doctor Strange is my favourite superhero, and this one really reminded me of that, and I loved it so much. My favourite story, though, that I have to shout out is the one with Doctor Strange and Illyana together, because I love those two as a duo. I love their banter. I love the storyline of that one, and while I loved all of the stories in this one, that one absolutely stood out for me, so I had to mention it. I then also read 3 X-Men comics, and that was Immortal X-Men, X-Men Hellfire Gala Immortal, and Legion of X, and this is all part of the larger Krakoan era, and I did really like these ones as well. I especially liked the Immortal X-Men and the Hellfire Gala, and what I will say about Legion of X is that it needed more Legion, and this one was focusing a little bit more on Nightcrawler, which is fine. I love Kurt so much, but I wanted a little bit more from Legion, as he is one of my favourite mutants, and also I do wish this one had been a little bit longer, just because it was a little bit of a confusing storyline and there was a lot of very big, very heavy topics in it that could have done with a little bit more page time. But otherwise, I did really enjoy these 3 volumes, and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the Krakoan era. And then we get into the Marvel Zombies section, because obviously I read a lot of things to do with Marvel Zombies this month because the TV show came out. So the first one I want to mention is Marvel Zombies Destroy, and this one was about Dum Dum Dugan teaming up with Howard the Duck to fight Nazi zombies. And it was as bonkers as it sounds and just as enjoyable. I loved reading this. I also read Dawn of Decay, and this one is a more child-friendly take on the zombie idea, and I did really like this one as well. I love that this was all about Groot trying to basically protect the Hulk so Bruce could come up with a cure for the zombie virus, and it was absolutely chaotic. It was a brilliant child-friendly look at Marvel Zombies. I really liked it. I thought it was adorable and chaotic and funny, and I had a great time with it. On the opposite side of that, I also had Black, White and Blood, and this one is definitely not for kids. It is a gory, very violent take on the zombies. It is a series of short stories set across the various different zombie verses, and I really like this one. And the 2 that most stood out to me was, first of all, the Punisher saving Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, from a zombie fight ring. I really enjoyed that one, and I also loved Moon Knight versus the Zombies. All of the stories in here were fantastic, but those 2 were my standouts. And then the final 2 I read was Marvel Zombies Assemble Volumes 1 and 2, and I really like these ones. These ones are based kind of in the MCU up until the Chitauri invasion, and then at that point a zombie virus is basically released and the Avengers are working together to try and stop it, and I really like this one as well. I love that this one was set in a more MCU timeline, which was fantastic. I will say the ending didn't quite work for me, and I feel like it needed to be a little bit longer to really flesh it out, but otherwise I had a great time reading this manga series, and I really wish there was more in it because I had such a good time with it. And that is some of my favourite reads from the month of September, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below, tell me what you read in September, I'd love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a zombie emoji down below to let me know that you were here. I'll also leave the link as well down below to all my social media if you want to check it out, or if you just want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But till next time everyone, bye!